to start the broadcast.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, well, hello out there. Welcome to the Biomimicry Workshop and Design Series. My name is Myla Kelly, and I am helping Marie Zanowick just with some organization and some of the technical logistics of putting on this workshop. I am the coordinator of the Peaks to Prairies Pollution Prevention Center, which is at Montana State University. We're the Pollution Prevention Center for EPA's Region 8, and which is, you probably all know, based in Denver. And so I have a couple of different things I'm going to talk about first before I introduce Marie. I'm going to talk about just a little bit of kind of webinar etiquette. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the webinar process, but hopefully this is a great way to get information out and to have some lively discussions even without all having to get together. So if you have any questions about getting the materials or using the webinar software or anything like that, you are welcome to email me or contact me. You probably have my contact information, but after this broadcast, I'll be sending out an email which will give you a little bit of information about where these webinars will be posted on our website and what our website is. So I will do that probably at the beginning of next week. But I wanted to just quickly introduce myself as a coordinator of the Peaks to Prairies Center. I've been in this position for a couple of years now, and prior to that I was the riparian ecologist for the Northwest Indian Fisheries Commission out in Washington, and also have been a water resource consultant for a great many years prior to that. I worked on stream and watershed restoration projects, so this topic is of great interest to me as well. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the webinar etiquette here. The way it works is that you guys are all muted so that we can minimize background noise and don't get a lot of different feedback. So you guys are all muted, but there is opportunities for asking questions and even for speaking on the webinar. And the way that that works is on your little control panel, you should see a question pane and a chat pane, and they're just little boxes that you can open up, and you can type in a question in the question pane, or you can type it into the chat pane. It doesn't really matter, but basically you can send that question or that comment to the entire audience, or if it's just kind of a technical question and you want to ask me about it, you can choose to just send it to the organizer. So I'll be looking at that throughout the broadcast, and if you've got any questions, I can respond to those, or I'll just hold on to them and facilitate asking Marie those questions at the end of her talk. The other way to participate, if you would like to actually speak with Marie, is to raise your hand. And so I have what I see on my screen is a list of all of the people that are, all of you out there, and there's a place where I can see if you've raised your hand, and I'm assuming that you guys can see that you can see how to raise your hand on your screen, and if you do that and I click on you, then magically you will be able to speak to all of us. So if you would like to do that after Marie's when she has an opportunity for questions, then we can give that a try as well. And if that doesn't seem to work smoothly, then you'll just have to type your question into the pane. But for the most part, especially for this first session, you guys will be muted, and then as we go down the line and teams will be in sessions where different teams will be speaking or presenting, then you will be set as a panelist, and so you will get a slightly different email from the GoToWebinar software that says you're a panelist, and in that case you'll be able to speak freely, a little bit more freely and easily to the audience. So we can go through those logistics as we go down the line, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of an overview on how that works. And one more thing before I introduce Marie or send it over to Marie is that we will post these webinars. These are being recorded, and so the webinars will be posted. And also, we thought it would be useful to post some of the materials that Marie is sending out to us in case for some reason you lose them, can't find them, delete your email or whatever. So we are going to be posting those things in a special certain section of our website, peakstoprairies.org. And we haven't done that yet, so I don't have the link for you, but I will send that link out to you probably the beginning of next week. So again, if you have any questions along the way as Marie is talking, I think our format for today is that she's got a lot of information to share with us, so she's going to do the majority of the take up the majority of our time today with the introduction and with her presentation. But there will be time for some questions at the end. So you don't have to wait till then to to send me a question or to write your question in your in the question pane there. You can do that anytime during the webinar. So, and I'll just facilitate asking her those questions. So I think that's it. There's probably more, but anyway, I look forward to meeting you all at some point, and I look forward to this workshop. And with that, I'll just hand it over to you, Marie.
Okay, thanks, Mila. Do you see my desktop?
Not yet. So with the magic of technology, I'm making you the presenter, and we should see your screen in just a minute. So now we see it.
Okay. There we go. Okay,
Great.
Well, thanks, Mila. I really appreciate the help from Peaks to Prairie. They're really helpful in getting this webinar series out there with the technology. So here's the agenda for today's webinar. Like Mila said, I'm going to be presenting a lot of information, and there will be some time at the end for questions, but mostly I'm just going to go through the material, and if you have a question, just save it for the end. So Mila already went through the workshop webinar etiquette, so let me introduce myself. I'm Marie Thanowick. I work at the Environmental Protection Agency. My background, I have a Bachelor's of Science in Biology and Public Health from the University of Colorado. I have a Master's of Science in Civil Engineering with a focus on industrial wastewater treatment plant design and construction. I've been a public servant for my whole career. I worked 4 years at the state of South Carolina in design and construction of industrial wastewater treatment plants. And I've spent the last 24 years at the Environmental Protection Agency in Denver. I've worked in a variety of different media programs, Superfund, the Resource Conservation Recovery Act. Now I work in the Pollution Prevention and Toxics Unit. And I serve as on the board of directors of our local water district, so I'm really familiar with water systems as well. My current job is I assist federal agencies in the West in developing and implementing sustainability programs to reduce their environmental footprint. The federal government is the largest purchaser of goods and services in the United States. And so when the federal government makes a move towards sustainability, it affects our whole system. And federal agencies are required to move towards sustainability through a series of presidential executive orders. I'm a certified biomimicry professional. I'm with the 2008 biomimicry professional certification course that I graduated in 2010. And I've now applied this tool of biomimicry in helping federal agencies meet their sustainability goals. So let me go through a few of the workshop goals. The goals of this workshop are to educate participants about biomimicry as a sustainability tool, to learn how to use the biomimicry methodology to solve environmental challenges that you have. It's a goal to expand the solution space around the 4 environmental challenges that were identified by the workshop participants. It provides good practice in using web-based tools and avoids a lot of travel costs and greenhouse gas emissions. You get a lot of experience in working in multidisciplinary teams and working with other groups. And this was an exercise that we did throughout our 2 years in our biomimicry education with the Biomimicry Institute. And it's very frustrating and very rewarding to look at a problem from a different discipline. So it's very valuable. And most importantly, the goal of the workshop is to return ourselves as humans to the natural world and to encourage us to look at nature in a new way. Let me go ahead and sort of introduce the participants. I'm not going to introduce each individual person. In future webinars, there will be an opportunity for each team, one a month, to introduce themselves and tell a little bit about their background and themselves before we go to the in-person session. But we have participants from educational institutions, from the U.S. Forest Service, EPA, the National Park Service, the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. There's private companies, nonprofit groups, local governments, and the diversity of disciplines. We have engineers, biologists, forest planners, architects, builders, public sector organizers, graphic designers, educators, and a possibility cartographer, and more. So we have a wide range. I was really impressed by the breadth of the knowledge that each individual person who's on the webinar has. So like I said, we'll have time during each upcoming session for having team members introduce themselves and tell about their discipline so we can draw on that. I've sent out information about the workshop logistics, but I'd like to go over it now just to be sure we're all clear on this. So the workshop is to be held via 6 webinar sessions. One a month, usually the third Thursday of each month from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And like Mila said, they will be recorded. And one 3-day in-person session at the Great Sand Dunes National Park and Preserve in September 11th through the 14th. And then we'll have 2 follow-up webinars where the teams can present their solutions to their design challenges. I've sent out the dates for those webinars, so you can put them on your calendar. You will receive a reminder notice 1 week prior to the webinar, along with the homework assignment for the next webinar class. So a week ago, you received the homework that will be due in 3 weeks. So you have a month to do your homework, and I'm giving you the homework assignments a week in advance. So in case you have any questions, you can ask during the webinar, or you can email me with your questions. The first 20 to 30 minutes of each webinar, the teams will present their homework, and we will review it as a class. Next will be a 1-hour lecture on the next steps in the biomimicry methodology. And the last part of the class will be a presentation of the homework and a chance and an opportunity to ask questions and share biomimicry stories with each other. For the in-person session, the Great Sand Dunes will host this. They have a remote site on the Crestone side of the park where we will be camping without water, electricity, or cell phone coverage. We will bring in our own water. There's no running water there. This session is optional but highly recommended. It will be an opportunity to work with your teams while practicing biomimicry in the field. At least one member of each team needs to attend the in-person session and agree to take the information back to the group. The in-person session will provide an opportunity for further teamwork and for instructions by biomimicry professionals who will dive deeper into the methodology and provide one-on-one assistance to the teams. So we'll have an expert in biomimicry, Rose Talk. She used to work for the Biomimicry Institute. She's a biologist and a permaculture specialist, and she'll be there to help us dive deeper into developing the strategies and designs for our challenges. And then we're having Jason Gearhart, who's a permaculture instructor and an expert in water systems in the West, to help us understand how nature affects water systems. Logistical information and sign-up will occur in July, and the cost for this in-person session will be $185 per person. And this is based on the government per diem for the meal, so we will bring in all the food for that session using that money. plus a $25 registration fee that will be donated to the park to offset their cost for hosting us. In this session, I'll go through an introduction to biomimicry. Some of you may have seen parts of this presentation before, but some participants have not heard this information, so you can enjoy a repeat performance. Then we'll go through the homework and technical assistance. So you have been assigned one of the team challenge groups, and it is suggested that you meet at least 2 times per month with your team to complete the homework. The classes are progressive, and it is necessary for teams to complete homework assignments each month as each assignment builds upon the previous one. We will review each month's homework requirement at the end of the PowerPoint presentation, and you will have an opportunity to ask questions. And the question and comment period is a good reason to view the in-person sessions rather than the recorded session. So, we are the babies of the planet. We are the young ones. The Earth has been creating conditions conducive to life for 3.8 billion years, a pretty impressive research and development track record. And as I will explain to you, we're one of the younger species on the planet, so we need to remember our place. So imagine for a moment that the planet's entire history is represented on 1 year calendar. So in February of that year, the first bacteria emerged from the primordial soup, and these are our most ancient ancestors. The next month, in March, photosynthesis begins to oxygenate the planet. And for the whole summer, one-cell organisms rule. They develop in that primordial soup. Then it takes all the way till September when sex bursts on the scene and organisms start sharing their DNA, and the diversity of life really explodes. And then by mid-December, we see fungi, plants, and insects join the party, along with amphibians, reptiles, mammals, and birds. So you can see that in the history of the planet, it's taken a long time to even get these organisms on the planet. Then on the summer solstice, the flowers arrive, December 22nd. Just a few days later, on December 25th, it was just a bad day for the dinosaurs. They go extinct, so it puts it in perspective. And just a mere 12 hours ago, our predecessors, the first hominids, started walking on 2 feet. And it wasn't until 24 minutes to midnight when humans arrived, just a few minutes ago. So you can see how young we are. We have not been on this earth for very long, so we are the young ones. How we will live in the next minute is going to determine our fate on earth as a species. Will we be sturdy survivors or a failed and remarkably brief evolutionary experiment? 99.9% of all organisms who have ever lived on this planet are extinct. So the 0.1% that's left have amazing adaptation strategies that we need to pay attention to. And it also reminds us that the planet Earth is not afraid of getting rid of species. And when we talk about living sustainably, it's the only way we can survive on the planet. So that's another important lesson for moving towards a sustainable lifestyle. Biomimicry is also about listening to those 30 to 100 million mentors that are found in nature. That's how many species they're estimating to be alive on the planet. They have been here for a long time and have developed the best ways, the most sustainable ways to live on the planet. So it's a really great ratio, 1 to 30 to 100 million mentors. So we have a lot of elders that we can draw on, and that's what biomimicry is about. So we are nature, and we have forgotten that. And as a species, humanity has made one really big system error. We seem to think that we're apart from nature rather than a part of it. We've been living outside of the law, the natural law, and the law is hot on our trail right now. Life's principles create conditions conducive to life. It recycles all materials, fosters cooperative relations, and is very self-organizing. And all of those kinds of principles are really old hats to our biological elders. We can protect the environment more effectively when we look to the natural world for solutions to our environmental impacts. And the science of biomimicry is a way that we can do that systematically. So biomimicry is unearthing astonishing treasures from nature's recipe books that we can mimic for our technological and industrial practices. But it isn't just about making better stuff, it's about how we think. It's a crash course in environmental education taught by nature, and we're going to be graded on what we do with the knowledge. And remember, a failing grade means our extinction. So it's really important. So what we say about, I'm unable to advance these slides. There we go. We say that biomimicry is the conscious emulation of nature's genius. And conscious implies that we intentionally ask nature for advice. Emulation means that we're not directly copying nature, but rather abstracting the deep design principles from the strategies found in the natural world and applying them to our challenges. And this is what we'll learn how to do in this workshop. We'll look at the strategies that organisms use to solve the challenges that we've identified, and we'll look at them in a holistic way and try to extract those deep design principles from those strategies and apply them to our solutions. So nature's genius recognizes that the inspiration we can gain from 3.8 billion years of research and development, currently represented by these 30 to 100 million species living on the planet. So as we move out of the industrial age and move into the biological age, this emerging science can help us develop nature-based approaches to satisfy the things that we want as humans or need. So we talk about biomimicry as being the model, measure, and mentor. And biomimicry gets design ideas from nature. It's a new science that studies nature's models and then imitates or takes inspiration from these designs and processes to solve human problems. Biomimicry is a way to design with nature and a way to test the rightness of our innovations. And that means that if no other organism on the planet is doing something, we should really question whether we should be doing it or not. So it's trying to design side by side with nature and measure our designs against nature. And if they don't measure up, we need to go back to the design table. Because after 3.8 billion years of evolution, nature has figured out what works, what's appropriate, and what will last. We also consider nature as mentor, and it suggests that we can learn from her, not extract from her. It's a design for nature that sets out to get it right from the get-go, and it's a new way to value the natural world. And here in the West, we're especially blessed with all the public lands that have been set aside in a preservation category so that we now have the opportunity to go in and extract those ideas while leaving nature intact. So we have a wonderful bounty of strategies just waiting for us out in the parks and forests and our open spaces. So in nature, humans can mimic the forms in nature, the processes, or we can mimic how an ecosystem performs functions that we need to do in our jobs. For example, in building a sustainable community, we need to mimic the forms, processes, and ecosystems found in the natural community. We can ask the question, what does this ecosystem want to do? It takes less energy and effort to work with the natural conditions than fight against them. And typically in the Industrial Revolution, we become really good at fighting the forces of nature. We call it heat, beat, and treat is what we do. We force molecules into submission. And that's one of the reasons we feel that we are dominant over nature. So one thing that biomimicry reminds us is that there are operating conditions on the planet Earth that we must design for. We can't ignore them. And these operating conditions are, well, that the Earth runs on gravity, sunlight, and water. So all chemistry in nature is done in water. It's a universal solvent. All organisms on the planet except humans get their energy source from sunlight. And all organisms have discovered ways to use gravity, either to support their ability to stay in place, or they've developed strategies that overcome gravity, such as the giant redwoods are able to defy gravity by growing tall and pumping liquids up. We know that life is subject to a dynamic non-equilibrium. So the Earth is always changing, and only organisms that adapt and evolve to these changes can survive. As humans, we build things that are not adaptable, and then when the system within the Earth changes, such as with earthquakes, floods, or fires, those products are destroyed because they can't adapt to the changing conditions. And so a better design incorporates that operating condition into its function. We also know that life on Earth is subject to a cyclical process, and there's lots of cycles within the planet. There's the rise and the fall of the sun and the moon, the seasons, the rain cycles, many others. And so organisms on Earth use the predictability of those cycles to better function in their ecosystem. We also know that Earth is subject to limits and boundaries. And so the blue ball of water on the left part of the screen represents all of the water on our planet, all the oceans, all the glaciers, all the rainwater, the clouds, the rivers, the lakes. So you can see that we have a very limited amount of water. And the ball on the right side of the screen represents all of the atmosphere that we have on our planet. So when we discharge pollutants into water or air, we're discharging it into a very limited substance that we have, and we need to take better care of that. So what I wanted to do now was to go through in some detail some products that have been developed using biomimicry. And in this talk, I'm going to go a little bit deeper into the biology of how this was extracted so that you have a better idea of how we look at the different strategies of organisms. So in the first example, this is an example of how we mimic a process that's used in nature. And so Dr. Bruce Roser has studied anhydrosis. It's the ability of some plants, animals, and bacteria to survive up in dried up forms for hundreds of years. And the way nature does this is that water within the cells is replaced with a sugar solution that thickens when water is removed to a point that the cell solidifies as glass and the organism dries out. So the water bear is an example of this. You can take a water bear, and they've done amazing things to these poor little creatures, even exposing them to severe ranges of temperature, of conditions, even irradiating them with radiation, and they always have come back to life. So the cells within this water bear are kept in a state of suspended animation until rehydration occurs and the animal returns to life. And so this strategy is being applied to vaccines. And so by drying out the organism in the vaccine, the health professionals can do away with the preservatives that are necessary to transport vaccines. They can also dry out bacteria to different degrees so they can inject not only the original vaccine but also the booster shot at the same time. By drying out different parts of the viral needed for the vaccine, they can also inject more than one vaccine at a time, and they would reconstitute at different times in your body. So these technologies are especially important to the need for influenza vaccines and their safety. And it removes the need for refrigeration of pharmaceutical processes and reduces costs. Well, as many plants vie for coveted food sources, ivy has found a niche that allows it to get enough sunlight and nutrients without having to compete with its fellow ground plants. This clever vine, by growing vertically and using another structure for support, receives direct sunlight and can be more apt to sway in the breeze without having to compete for scarce resources. So we as humans are starting to take advantage of this very unique niche as well. And a Brooklet-based firm called SMIT has created a product called Solar Ivy or Grow. Mimicking the look and function of ivy, this product can mimic wind and solar power generating photovoltaic cells that can be attached to building facades. It is also aesthetically stimulating to look at, and its modularity allows for scalability, just as an ivy-cloaked facade is picturesque to graze at. So each 4 by 7 foot strip generates 85 watts of solar power, and it's a viable method of harnessing a free solar and wind energy our planet has. And it's still in the concept phase waiting for funding. So the next time you're walking down the road and you think you see a structure covered in ivy, you might get a closer look and see if in fact it's a solar ivy mimic. The circulatory system of humans is able to prevent blood loss from wounds by sending platelets to block the hole. And just as the human circulatory system sends platelets to a wound to prevent blood loss, oil pipelines can now transport special polymers that clot oil at the site of a leak. So drawn by pressure of the escaping liquid, these polymers press against the opening to form a temporary seal. And because each quote-unquote platelet is electronically tagged, engineers can determine the exact location of a leak and can repair the pipeline while continuing to operate. This technology is called Advanced Technology for Leak and Location and Sealing Systems and works in any pressurized flow system. It's by Brinker. And in addition to oil pipelines, it may prove useful in the water and chemical industries as well. So using a technology from our own bodies to better serve the environment. So the bombardier beetle fends off predators like ants, birds, and frogs by spraying a high-pressure jet of boiling irritant in a rapid-fire action called pulse combustion. The term pulse combustion is usually associated with paint sprayers, furnaces, and jet engines. So scientists looked and said, how do beetles manage this advanced technology? And a German chemist discovered that the beetle combines hydrogen peroxide, hydroquinone, and 2 catalysts in a tiny heart-shaped combustion chamber in the abdomen. The resulting chemical reaction produces a 100°C jet of benzoquinide and steam. Once a critical pressure is reached, the chamber exit valve opens and pop, boiling toxic liquid and steam blast in the direction of danger. So a researcher at Cornell University said that the beetle's natural spray gun abdomen operates at an oscillation that is faster than muscles can contract, and once initiated proceeds automatically. The pulses can be from 500 to 1,000 per second. So a team of researchers at the University of Leeds would like to mimic this unique release valve that gives the beetle amazing efficiency in liquid expulsion. So they're attempting to apply the beetle strategy to aircraft industry using pulse combustion to reignite engines that cut out at high altitudes. The research team is studying the design principles behind the beetle's heart-shaped combustion chamber and nozzle ejection mechanism as well. So ideally, the team will develop a method for more accurately spraying plasma into jet's engine combustion chamber, thereby improving upon current reigniting capabilities and getting that fuel further into the engines. And other applications for the spraying mechanism could include more efficient fire extinguishers, reliable pharmaceutical sprays, improving nasal sprays and inhalers. Better spray efficiency would reduce energy cost and the amount of liquid to be effective. And if the liquid can be water-based chemistry like the bombardier beetle, it would be environmentally friendly. So here we're mimicking both the form and the process. Swarms are perfect models for those trying to solve problems dealing with self-organization and decentralization. So the organization team should pay particular attention to this example. Also known as swarm logic, animals such as bees, ants, and birds solve problems not by making independent decisions, but by communicating with each other using a simple language that allows them to coordinate, organize, and problem solve without orders from a central command. A company called Region Energy has developed a device that applies the concept of swarm logic that allows electrical appliances in a building to communicate with each other to minimize how much power the appliances collectively use at any one point in time. Ultimately, they must satisfy local constraints, such as some appliances like a refrigerator needs to cycle on and off in order to keep that temperature as high as possible, as low as possible. But they must also simultaneously satisfy the system's objective, which is to reduce the peak load. So instead of using a top-down approach to control appliances, a more decentralized approach to energy management offers a more effective means to manage supply and demand in a delicately balanced electrical system. It's cheaper and more healthy for the environment since peak loads are often satisfied by coal-fired power plants. So it would reduce that peak load up to 20 to 30%. It's a simple, let's get smart little gadget. And in this system, we're mimicking the ecosystem. So an example of biomimicry in architecture, the Eastgate building covers a full block and contains 60,000 square feet of retail space, 280,000 square feet of office space, and parking for 450 cars. It's located in Zimbabwe in southern Africa, and the temperatures there range in the 80s with highs reaching the 90s. Imagine a building in this location having no conventional air conditioning. Now, imagine this building maintaining a comfortable temperature, and both of these conditions are true. So Eastgate was designed specifically for thermal control. The architects from ARUP, inspired by the indigenous termite mounds. So the termite mounds on the left side of the screen are indigenous to South Africa. And termites have to cultivate a particular fungus which breaks down the cellulose that the termites actually eat. And the termites are not capable of digesting cellulose, so they need the fungus in order to live. And the fungus need a regulated temperature in order to live, and specific levels of CO2 within their mounds. So large termite colonies can attain a constant nest temperature that is independent from the outside ambient temperature. The termites do this by controlling the openings in hundreds of tunnels. The portion of the termite mound seen above ground represents only a portion of the nest. The majority of the nest is subterranean. The subterranean network's temperatures depend on the air circulation driven by hundreds of tunnels in the visible portion of the nest. The shape of the mound themselves also acts to regulate the internal conditions. Differences in temperatures between the nest and the external environment cause air movement. This movement is basically a simple and elegant convection current resulting in gas exchanges. So termite mounds are shaped specifically for their environment to achieve these specific functions. Mounds found in cooler locations like a forest are less complex, merely dome-shaped instead of more complex cathedral shape. Each form is a result of being attuned to the local environment. The shapes are a result of a compromise between heat regulation and gas exchange, both of which need to be controlled for optimal fungi growth. The success of termite mounds is the balance of the optimal shape for the specific climate as well as actively adjusting the tunnel openings. So the AURP engineers distilled the success of the termite mounds into guidelines for this design. For example, no more than 25% of the outside is glass. The designers did not only do that, but shaded all windows by racks of cement arches that jut out more than a yard in order to keep the harsh sun from heating here. The complex relies on a system of fans, ducts, and vents to keep temperature steady. The complex is comprised of two buildings by bridges across a shady glass roof atrium open to the breezes. Fans suck fresh air in from the atrium, blows it upstairs through hollow spaces under the floors, and from there into each office through baseboard vents. As it rises and warms, the air is drawn out through ceiling vents, and finally it exits through 48 round brick chimneys on the roof. During the summer's cool nights, large fans flush air through the building 7 times an hour to chill the hollow floors. And by day, smaller vents blow 2 charges of air an hour through the building. For winter days, when it's cooler, there are small heaters in the vents to provide that warming. And as a result of this design, in the first 5 years alone, the building has saved the owner over $3.5 million in energy costs, and it uses only 10% of the energy that would be consumed by a conventional building of the same size. So this is an example of mimicking the form of nature. Some of you have heard about the bullet train, very famous example. In Japan, these trains can travel up to 200 miles per hour. But the sound levels exceed environmental standards. And one source of noise was an atmospheric pressure wave forced in front of the train as it travels through a narrow tunnel, creating a loud boom upon its exit. And that boom sounded like a clack of thunder that could be heard half a mile away. And it's called the bullet train because originally the cone of the train was shaped like a bullet. So an engineer with J.R. West was a bird watcher, and he used his knowledge of the splashless water entry of kingfishers and silent night owls to decrease the sound generated by the train. So a kingfisher is able to move quickly from air, a low resistance, low drag medium, to water, which is a high resistance, high drag medium. The kingfisher's beak provides an almost ideal shape for such an impact. The beak is streamlined, steadily increasing in diameter from its tip to its head. This reduces the impact as the kingfisher essentially wedges its way into the water, allowing the water to flow past the beak rather than being pushed in front of it. Because the train faced the same challenge, moving from a low drag open air to a high drag air in the tunnel, the designers designed the forefront of the train based on the beak of the kingfisher. So how does nature clean? The lotus leaf is one of the cleanest plants in nature, even though it lives in a swamp. The many crevices on the lotus leaf's rough surface trap a maze of air upon which water droplets float, so that the slightest breeze or tilt in the leaf causes balls of water to roll cleanly off, taking attached dirt particles with them. And a company called Stowe Lotusan invented a paint and a fabric finish. The paint's called Lotusan, and it mimics this design by producing a patented surface that naturally cleans itself during a rainstorm. So they paint the outside of the building with this Lotusan paint, and every time it rains, the dirt particles fall away, similar to the way it does with the lotus leaf. They've also applied this to surface fabric finishes. So the final example is, how do birds avoid a collision? So you never see a bird flying into a spider's web. And why is that? Well, the web includes particles that can be seen in ultraviolet light, and birds see in ultraviolet light. So a company in Germany has embedded ultraviolet particles that we as humans cannot see into their glass, making windows visible to birds to avoid collisions. So in biomimicry, we strive to emulate these general patterns and processes found in nature and to extract them and use those strategies to make better products and designs. And we refer to the general patterns and processes found in nature as life's principles. And life's principles outline strategies for thriving under the operating conditions on the planet. And they represent the sustainable system that we wish to emulate. So all of the 30 to 100 million species on the planet follow all of these life's principles except humans. So it's time we got the message and follow the laws of nature. So what I want to do next is to go through in some detail life's principles, to explain them to you, and using life's principles will be the core one of the core features of this biomimicry workshop. And in future workshops, we'll go through in more detail and have some exercises around really understanding and learning these life's principles. So one of life's principles is evolve to survive. And that means continually incorporating and embody information to ensure an enduring performance. A biological example is that bacteria. They're a rapidly evolving kingdom due to their short lifespan. And because we as humans have really misused antibiotics, we have allowed the strongest bacteria to survive and pass their survival secrets onto the next generation. Over time, this has resulted into antibacteria-resistant bacteria. And this evolution means that medicines that would have originally killed off bacteria are no longer effective. A human example is our democracy, and democracies are continually evolving systems. They represent the collective desire of the people through voting, and different information is embedded into the culture, which allows the culture to adapt and change over time. The way nature evolves to survive is through these different strategies. It replicates strategies that work. An example of that, if you look at the history of the bicycle, how it started out, and the parts of the bicycle that worked were kept, and the parts that didn't work, like the giant front wheel, were discarded. So we replicated strategies that work in inventing the current day bicycle. Another strategy nature uses to evolve to survive is integrating the unexpected. An example of that is 3M sticky notes. And the glue that was designed that ended up being used in the 3M sticky note was a poor quality glue. It didn't stick very long. But by integrating this unexpected discovery into a different design, 3M was able to make a product that we all use today. Another strategy that nature uses to evolve to survive is reshuffling information. And we do that a lot, especially in the federal government, by changing jobs and by allowing for details where a person with one expertise goes and brings that information to another area in the system so that we can reshuffle that information and use it in new ways. The next life principle is that nature is resource efficient with materials and energy. And this means that nature skillfully and conservatively takes advantage of local resources and opportunities. So creatures are constantly adjusting, trying to reach a steady state, comfortable relationship with their environment. A biological example of this is the Arctic hare. And they're a rich brown color during snow-free summers, and in winter their coat shifts to all white as they adapt to the changing conditions. They even take on a mottled white and brown when the snow melt comes in the spring. Oh, I'm sorry, I got on the wrong page. So to be resource efficient, let me restate that. Okay, resources used in the creation of an entity, a living or non-living entity, include both tangible, the materials, and the intangible, the energy and information. Life uses these resources efficiently, which means that they're able to perform and function effectively with the least amount of time, effort, and resources. However, in nature, as in human application, it only works if the functional needs are met. So as such, for life, effectiveness takes precedent over efficiency. A biological example is that birds have hollow bones, and by eliminating unnecessary material and putting bone cells only where reinforcements are necessary, the resulting structure of the bone is the most efficient use of the material while still allowing for flight. A human example comes from interface carpet, and many of you know the example of how interface carpet has adopted life's principles as their operating principles for their company to great success. So they asked the question, how does nature adhere to a floor? And they realized nature uses gravity to keep things on the floor of a forest, for example. So instead of putting glue to glue their carpet tiles down, they have this small 2-inch by 2-inch square of plastic with a glue-like substance on it, and they just use that to connect the tiles together. And it's very resource efficient. The way nature is resource efficient is nature uses a multifunctional design, and an example of that is ducks preen by using their beak to stimulate the oil glands on the surface of their body. And the oil from the preening, it not only waterproofs the feathers, but also turns into vitamin D in sunlight as a sun blocker. So they're very resource efficient and use multifunctional design. One element of their function serves many functions. Another strategy that nature uses to be resource efficient is to use low energy processes. An example of that would be a solar heated home. Nature also uses recycled all materials as a strategy to be resource efficient. So for example, when trees shed their leaves, they reabsorb valuable nitrogen-rich chlorophyll into their trunks to reserve it for the next year. But carbon and hydrogen, which are very plentiful in the environment, are shed and used as food for other organisms. Nature uses the strategy of fitting form to function to be resource efficient. And an example would be different birds have different wing structures depending on how they fly. So if they have to do tight maneuvers, their wings are different than if they need to move fast or if they need to soar. And a human example of fitting form to function would be the bullet train that we just talked about. So organisms are also able to adapt to changing conditions. And that means they appropriately respond to the dynamic context. and they invest optimally in strategies that promote both development and growth. And you heard about the Arctic hare that's able to change and adapt to changing conditions when the snow is melting in the spring. And a human example of how to adapt to changing conditions would be the movie industry. So we first started out as a video rental store, then the video rental stores changed to DVDs, and then to Blu-rays, and now those companies are transitioning into instant downloadable movies or disc sent through mail, or they're going out of business. They're becoming extinct. So the strategies that nature uses to adapt to changing conditions is that nature maintains integrity through self-renewal. And an example of that is rhino horns. They're non-living material, and they can crack during their use. But they self-repair their cracks by approaching in the horn that, when exposed to air, fills the crack and repairs the damage. Our human bodies do this as well. We don't wait until our system completely shuts down. Our systems are constantly repairing itself, and we maintain the integrity of our bodies through constant self-renewal. Another strategy to adapt to changing conditions is to incorporate diversity. And an example is Apple did this with the iPod. They offer 4 models, 7 capacity choices, 9 color options, and a price range from $50 to $250. And then they can tap into a much broader audience because they incorporated diversity into their design. And the final strategy that nature uses is to embody resilience through variation, redundancy, and decentralization. And a good example comes again from our own body. Our immune system, which is critical to our survival, has 5 different types of immune cells. It has numerous immunobodies that can be replenished from the lymph nodes and from the cells that are circulating throughout the whole body, while lymph nodes are distributed in numerous locations throughout the body. So we have a variety of ways to fight infections. We have redundancy. We have many different organisms that do the same function. And we have decentralization. We have places throughout our whole body where we have this ability. And so in human designs, we often want only efficiency. So we reduce variation and redundancy and decentralization. And that's when we get into trouble, because if one system goes down, such as the tsunami that affected the nuclear plants in Japan, we don't have enough backups. Another one of life's principles is to integrate development with growth, and this means to invest optimally in strategies that promote both development and growth. A biological example is the first 40 weeks of growth, human fetus goes through stages of development of specific cells, so we develop specific organisms, they differentiate, and then we grow those organs, we grow those cells. A human example is that cities that grow well grow and develop an optimized balance between growth and development. And if one aspect moves faster, let's say you cite a big housing development without doing the proper infrastructure, the function declines. People get caught in traffic jams, or the school systems or the healthcare systems get overloaded. The strategies that nature uses to do that is nature combines modular and nested components. So for example, computers are modular and nested, building on an assembly of zeros and ones. Nature self-organizes in order to integrate development and growth, and an example of that would be mangrove islands are self-organizing. A seed from one will float until its bottom tip touches shallow water and roots. Then sand forms around the root, it gets bigger and provides a nursery for small fish, attracting birds who provide nitrogen from defecation, and another mangrove island is self-organized. Nature also builds from the bottom up. A coral reef is built one coral colony at a time and are some of the most diverse ecosystems in the world because of that. So another one of life's principles is to be locally attuned and responsive. And that means is to fit into and integrate with the surrounding environment. One size does not fit all. The strategies that nature uses to do that is to use readily available materials and energy, use feedback loops, such as a monthly power bill tells you how much power you used last month, but it doesn't really give you a good feedback, whereas if you move your meter indoors where you can see where the electricity is running really high, people use less energy. Another example of that strategy is to leverage those cyclical processes that is one of the operating conditions of the planet. So for example, the blooming and fruiting of the saguaro cactus coincides with the migrations of bats northward. So the cactus flower provides food and the bats pollinate the flower and disperse the seeds while replenishing their own energy needs. And this cyclical process is being disrupted under climate change and is one of the causes for the prediction of a lot of species extinction. So birds migrate based on the light from those changing seasons, but their food source may not be available due to the changes in climate when they get there. Another strategy that nature uses is it cultivates cooperative relationships. Now, nature is much more cooperative than competitive, and competition in nature is too costly, so nature avoids competition by organisms that want the same food source actually focus on finding a different niche. They'll feed in the nighttime instead of the daytime, for example. So examples, the example that's here of locally attuned and responsive is the Namibian desert beetle. Has these ridges on the back of its body, and it lives in an environment where there is no rain. So it climbs up on top of the sand dunes in the foggy part of the morning, and the water is able to collect on the shell of its body and funnel into its mouth because it's a locally attuned and response to living in a desert area. Humans have taken this idea and have designed this product for use of refugees in areas where there's no clean water. And this is also a multifunctional design where once the human uses the clean water, they can use this equipment for many other things as well. And the final life principle is that life uses life-friendly chemistry. And this is chemistry that supports life's processes. All chemistry in nature is done in water. And an example is the blue mussel. It adheres to rocks without causing harm to the mussel. And a company called Columbia Forest Products uses a glue called Pure Bond that mimics both the structural component of the blue mussel and the soy-based glue to eliminate formaldehyde in their production. So the strategies that nature uses for life-friendly chemistry is to be able to break down products into benign constituents. And for example, snake venom is a deadly form. It will kill its prey, but when that prey is consumed by the snake, it can break those components down into non-toxic constituents. Another strategy is that nature does all its chemistry using water as the solvent. For example, the enamel on your teeth is extremely hard, yet it was formed in your body using water as a non-toxic solvent. And nature builds selectively with a small subset of elements. So a plant leaf can perform many functions, yet the elements of our leaf are a few standard elements. Just because we have the whole periodic table doesn't mean we need to use every element in our designs. And right now in our human design process, there's a shortage of rare metals and rare materials. What if we could eliminate those rare materials so that our products break down into benign constituents when we're finished with them? Like I mentioned earlier, there'll be an opportunity to go more in depth and to have exercises learning and becoming more familiar with these life's principles. So what biomimicry is really good at, in my opinion, is encourage people from different disciplines to collaborate using nature as our model and our mentor and measure. But as biomimics, we need to learn how to quiet our cleverness. And life is so incredibly resilient. But we are life too, and we are not alone. And we have 30 to 100 million mentors to help us on this journey. But what we have to do is we have to reawaken our curiosity and go back into a childlike mind and connect with that self and that sense of wonder that actually says, I don't have all the answers. And part of the eyesight exercises that you have been given is to remind you to look at wonder at these mentors that we have in nature. And one of the most amazing things that happened to me through going through biomimicry training is when I'm out in nature, I no longer care a lot about what the name of an organism is. I want to know what it's doing and how it's doing it. I just look in fascination of how did that flower unfurl? How do those bees make honey? How did the things in nature perform their functions? Then we need to embrace this wisdom that we discover. And we need to reconnect with our own humanity, looking at some of the cultural elements from the Native Americans who really saw themselves as a piece in a bigger puzzle of nature, not the organism that had dominance over nature. So one tool we can help in our biomimicry exercises is Ask Nature. It's www.asknature.org, and in future webinars we'll be going through a tutorial on how to access data from this website. So just imagine if you could have nature's most elegant ideas organized by design and engineering function. So you could enter into this web page, how does nature filter salts from water, and see how mangroves and penguins and shorebirds all use strategies to desalinate without using fossil fuels. And now imagine that you could meet the people who have studied these organisms, and together you could create the next bio-inspired solution, and hopefully a solution to the 4 challenges that we've identified. So Ask Nature is a free open source project built by the community and for the community. The goal of Ask Nature is to connect innovative minds with life's best ideas, and in the process inspire technologies that create conditions conducive to life. So to do this, Ask Nature is doing something that has never been done before, taking all the existing research on organisms and classifying them by function, by what function the organism is achieving. By learning how organisms meet these challenges, we can learn how to solve our own design challenges. And a lot of the work in solving the challenges that we have identified is to find the strategies of how organisms are using, what strategies they're using, and then collect those strategies and see if we can identify some deep principles in those strategies. And to help the teams with that, this summer, Region 8 has been lucky enough to attract a young student who will be joining us at the beginning of the summer and helping teams look through research and identify those strategies that organisms use to solve the challenges that we've identified. So you'll have some help come June with sorting out those strategies for your particular challenge. So just in the next few minutes, I wanted to give you an example, some examples of how EPA Region 8 has been using biomimicry to solve some of the problems that we have identified. So in September of 2009, we did a biomimicry workshop for the Great Sand Dunes National Park. That's how they became a partner in this. And they had a specific, two specific challenges that they identified. One, they have about 300,000 visitors a year at the Great Sand Dunes, and mostly in the summer, and they drink a lot of beverages. It's very hot there up on the dunes. And so they asked the question, they said, you know, just developing a recycling program based on recycling these plastic drink bottles and shipping them probably off to China doesn't seem like the best we could do. So we looked at the challenge from a biomimicry perspective. So how does nature provide portable hydration at the Great Sand Dunes in that ecosystem? And so looking at how organisms operate in the San Luis Basin, we were able to identify some principles that those organisms lived under. There are no organisms that go up on the top of the dunes in the hot part of the day. And yet that's the time of the day when most visitors climb the dunes. And so the Park Service decided to reorient some of their programs to show movies and have visitor talks during the hot part of the day, to add more shade structures around the park where people could sit in the shade during the hot part of the day, and to educate visitors that they were the only organism that were doing this, and is that a good idea? They also looked at, because nature recycles all material, what material could they recycle in that ecosystem? And they can readily recycle aluminum because of the value. And so they've submitted a proposal to all of their beverages are served with through vending machines. They don't have a concession operation in the park. So they want to redirect all of their vending machines to contain the new aluminum screw top bottles. They want to sell only aluminum bottles in refillable bottles in their bookstore. And they also looked at ways where else are plastic bottles, drink bottles, coming into the park. And one big avenue was the school children who are coming on the buses. So they've started an educational campaign to get those school children to bring their own water bottles. And if they do, they get a special sticker for that water bottle telling them how environmentally sound they've been. They also have developed a plan to charge an additional fee of just a few dollars to the students who come without their water bottles so that they could purchase a reusable bottle in the park. The other benefit of hosting the biomimicry workshop in this remote area, it gave them some time to think about what exactly they needed to do. And the fact that 90% of the visitors to the Great Sand Dunes only travel 40 feet from their car. And so they realized they didn't have to provide portable hydration very far to visitors because most of them stay really close in to the visitor center. The other challenge that we looked at in the park was how does nature respond to soil disturbance? Because every time they did construction, for example, just a few years ago, they buried all of their power lines. There's high winds down in the San Luis Basin, and the wind would knock out the power, plus they were not very aesthetically pleasing. So they had all this destruction of the soil, but then even though they had a re-veg plan, they had a lot of invasive species that came in. And so again, the biomimicry workshop gave them a chance to sit down and really think about it, and they realized that they had natural grasses that were growing, and they used those as the re-veg material, but they realized that the vegetative zone and the root zone of a grass is very narrow, whereas it only takes up one small niche of the ground cover. So they looked at different organisms, different plants that could fill up the whole root zone and the whole vegetative zone, and they discovered 7 different species that grow in that area. And so they're in the process of converting the volunteer group who go in every year and pull invasive species out of their construction areas and convert those volunteers to actually collect those seeds. And like Native Americans have done in the past, they would save their seeds and have a seed saved saving area in the park and use that the variation of the 7 different kinds of vegetation in re-veg and avoid the invasive species, or at least reduce them. Another example is using nature-based principles to reduce chemicals that are found on our toxic release inventory. And for those of you who are not familiar with TRI databases, it's a law that was passed many years ago and one of the best examples of incentives to reduce pollution. And companies are required to submit to EPA the amounts of chemicals they use in a wide variety of different chemicals, the amounts that are released to the environment. And all EPA does is collect that information and publish it. And so if you are one of the 10 top polluters in your state, it's a great incentive to reduce that pollution. For example, many years ago, this has been probably, I can't even remember the date, but quite a long time ago, Coors Beer Company was one of the 10 top polluters in Colorado, and you can imagine how quickly they got the incentive to get off that list. And because they advertised the pure Rocky Mountain spring water as their ingredient. So one of the top TRI chemicals is biphenyl A, or BPA. Many of us know it as the contaminant in plastic that gets into our plastic water bottles. A lot of people don't know that it is also used in carbonless paper receipts. So in order to get a carbonless paper cash register receipt, 3 different chemicals are micro-encapsulated on the surface of the paper. It's a colorless glucose dye, a solvent, and a developer. And one of those chemicals is BPA. And when the cash register hits the paper with a number or a letter, it breaks those microencapsulations and develops the dye, which is then the letter forms. So what we did is we looked at how does nature create an instant color change, and we found 16 different organisms that create a different color change. A tomato turning from green to red would be one example. And out of those 16 strategies, we were able to identify 3 deep principles that could be used in the design of a carbonless paper receipt that did not include BPA. So this was a demonstration project because EPA does not develop products, but it was showing how you could apply this strategy to a product design. The final example is we use biomimicry as a sustainability tool for the U.S. Forest Service. And when we originally presented the idea of biomimicry to their top managers in the Forest Service, they said, well, you know, we've got a lot of initiatives going on right now, and we really want to focus on the work we have. We don't really want to introduce a new science, but we want to start the process. And so what we did initially with the Forest Service was to start incorporating the language of life's principles in their sustainability documents as a way of reconnecting the foresters to the resource that they preserve. People in the Forest Service are very familiar with biological terms. They've had some biological studies in order to get degrees that are appropriate for the Forest Service. So in their accomplishment reports and other kinds of sustainability documents, we looked for ways to use the wording of life's principles as a way to start incorporating that into their psychic and their understanding. And now with this biomimicry workshop, we've actually identified some of the challenges that the Forest Service has, and we're taking it a step further. The 4 challenges that we have will become future ideas for new biomimicry ideas for other agencies. So we'll be really pleased when we complete these 4 challenges. So now with about 40 minutes left, I'm going to go through the homework and the work of this workshop. So we've developed 4 challenge teams to look at these specific challenges. So how does nature collect, distribute, and store water with minimal energy use? And we hope to solve this challenge and apply it to Western agriculture, because water is such a dear commodity out here in the West. How does nature communicate, and how can these strategies help us communicate about sustainability? And this is specifically for people who are trying to get the word out. And how can you spread the word in a way that uses life's principles and connects us to the natural world? The challenge of how does nature organize came out of a request from the Forest Service. They're trying to develop a sustainable operations program. They have developed a sustainable operations program, but as it moves from a Western-based collective to a national organization, how can you organize a program that can adapt and evolve over time in a very bureaucratic structure? And many of us who work in government organizations can use this information. How do we best organize and structure our systems so that they can be adaptive in the future? And the final challenge, we combined two different challenges that we had. How do front-range species adapt to seasonal changes in climate? And how do they inform human technologies and contribute to problem solving, and how can we interpret these functions for human visitors? So what we'll be looking for in that challenge is looking at ways that species on the Front Range adapt to seasonal changes in climate and use those strategies to help inform adaptation plans for climate change. Federal agencies are required to develop adaptation plans based on the effects of climate change. And also, while we're looking at those organisms on the Front Range, we can find out more information about them, and that will help inform interpretive programs in the Front Range natural open spaces, so that people who visit those facilities can better understand the value of the organisms that live in their community. So let me take a few minutes to go through the homework and bring you up to speed. You've received the homework a week ago, and it's due 3 weeks from today. Each team will be asked to submit one or two PowerPoint slides so that we can go through the homework at the beginning of next webinar. So the homework, you have two homework ideas or requirements for this one. The first one is to form your groups. Determine your meeting times and discuss and complete your homework as a team. So I've given the assignment of each challenge team to one person. I just randomly selected those people. Everyone will have an opportunity, hopefully, to lead one of these teams. So the lead assignment for the challenge teams now does not mean you will always be the lead. It means you've done your job. There'll be 6 webinars, and most of the teams have 5 to 6 people on, so each person will be responsible, hopefully, for leading one of the homework assignments. So part of the value in learning biomimicry is to practice working in teams of different disciplines. And in my experience, this was extremely frustrating and extremely valuable. For example, as an engineer on the team, I was always interested in getting the work done. That's what engineers do. They get it done. Not that other people don't, but what I found is that the biologists were usually extremely frustrated with me because they wanted to explore further and I wanted them to come to a decision. But together, we moderated both of those needs. We explored as much as we needed to, and then we also met the deadlines of the assignment. So as I mentioned earlier, the classes are progressive, and it's necessary for teams to complete homework assignments each month, as each assignment builds upon the previous one. And if you're having trouble in your team getting your team members to complete assignments, you can let me know and I can see what I can do. So if you're unable to complete your assignments for this class, please consider now dropping out of the workshop and enrolling in one at another time so that you honor the time of your team members. Some ideas for team meetings. We use Skype, which I found I could not put on my government computer. So I used a personal computer to Skype. That was always helpful. You can use conference calls. Many agencies and organizations have conference lines that people can call into. There are internet share sites out there that you could develop to, like Dropbox, for example, to share your information. You can use Adobe Connect systems or other online meeting tools, and you might think of others that you would discover and also would share with the rest of the group. So I suggest that you have at least 2 sessions for each homework assignment, 1 session to discuss the assignments and assign the roles for the required work, and 1 session to collect the assignments and prepare the PowerPoint slide or slides to present your homework to the rest of the team. Now remember, when you present your homework, we just want the solution on the PowerPoint slide, and then we can use, you can verbally discuss maybe some of the frustrations, 1 or 2 barriers that you had to overcome, or something really innovative that you learned of how to do things. You can have more sessions if you need them. Sometimes on our teams we met 2 or 3 times a week. Sometimes we met just once a month, depending on how much work we had. So the second part of the homework assignment is to experience nature. It's your ability to find and learn from nature's mentors depends on how well you observe nature. So you're asked to select an eyesite that you could go to several times throughout the next month. I recommend that you use a journal to record your information, but that's up to you. You're suggested that you visit different times of the day and different times of the year to see how your eyesight is changing. And you can draw and record what you hear and see and smell and your thoughts and experiences. Those are all good observation skills. So your first exercise was to read 2 articles, Getting to Know Nature and Secrets of Wildlife. Those are short articles that help you understand how to really look at nature. And a new eyesight exercise will be provided each month to give you some variation on what you do when you go there. So you do things like, what relationships do you see at your eyesight? My neighbor, we have turkeys and deer in our yard, and brought to my attention some interesting things that the turkeys were doing that I really hadn't noticed. And so I started really observing those turkeys as they go through our yard and feeding, and seeing some really distinct behaviors and relationships between the deer and the turkeys, for example. So what about patterns? Do you see some patterns that are consistently occurring? And maybe you could sketch them so you could make notes of that. What are some of the adaptations, either behavioral or psychological, that you see in response to the abiotic or the biotic pressures that nature is imposing on these organisms? Can you see ways that life is shaping its environment rather than the environment shaping the life of the organism? And rather than asking what is the organism doing, ask yourself, how does this behavior fit the environment, and what will the organism do next to fit into the environment? Make note of gradients that you see, or edges and boundaries, because edges and boundaries of systems are the most productive areas because they have to wobble between 2 or more different conditions. And how do these edges and gradients fit together? So those will be very valuable, and when we go in the in-person session, we'll also be able to set up a different eyesight down at the Great Sand Dunes. So that's the basic information. I'm going to leave the last half hour for questions or comments. So Mila, if you'd like to open up those lines.
Sure. Thank you so much, Marie. That was fantastic. I think first maybe what I'll do is just from a participant's perspective, let me just summarize what I think our homework is for the next class, and then you can let me know we're on track. So the first thing we need to do is get in touch with our groups, and you sent out the group list in an email about last week, right? And we will post that on our website too. But and that is correct. Those groups that are there are current.
They are. I'm going to send out a new group list today. There's been I was brought to my attention that I left one person off the group.
Okay.
So I will send out the final group list today to all the participants.
Okay, so then our first task will be to, for the team leader that's listed for each group, they will take the initiative to contact those people on the list that are in your group.
Right, they'll set up whatever way I would suggest sending emails, or if you want to do phone calls, to contact everybody. You can use things like Doodle. There's different ways you can find times that are convenient for all of you or most of you to meet.
Okay, and one person did suggest using Doodle in one of the questions.
Great.
So,
that's perfect.
And so that's the first part of our homework, and then the second part of our homework is to is our observation of nature. Now, that doesn't need to be necessarily connected with what our challenge team question is.
That's true. Just that you start observing nature and to really hone your observation skills. And then at the next class, instead of turning in a homework, I'll just ask 3 or 4 different people if they'd like to share some of their observations at that time with the workshop participants.
Great. Okay. And just one note on those links for getting to know nature and watching wildlife. When I clicked on one of the links a little while ago, it wasn't connecting very well. So we will go ahead and post those articles on our website as well. And I'm sorry I don't have the link to give you. It'll be on the peakstoprairies.org site, but there'll probably be an icon on our homepage. But I will send that link out when I have it finalized. But we can also post those articles on our website in case that link isn't working.
Okay. Would you like me to put those articles in a PDF and send them out to everyone?
That might be helpful.
Well, the links worked well for me. I'm sorry they're not working.
Yeah, no, that's okay. One of them worked, and it could just be my system now. But maybe that would probably be good.
Okay.
In a PDF. Okay, and let me just see if there was any other questions. And if anyone else has a question now while I'm going through some of these, then please go ahead and send them in. I am going to assume that everybody received the webinar notice from GoToWebinar. I don't know if that comes through as my name or if it comes through from GoToWebinar, but you should get one prior to each class. And so I'll work on the settings for the within the GoToWebinar software so that you're not getting 10 emails from them, 10 reminder emails, because I know how annoying that is. But I will make sure that you will get one email reminder for the webinar with the link one day prior to each class. So if anybody is not getting those reminders, then please just let me know. And again, I'll go through those settings to make sure you're not being spammed every hour to tell you that you have a class to participate in a day, in a week, in an hour. So I'll go ahead and do that. And let's see, does anybody else have any questions? I wonder, I would really love to try the hand raising component of this because I haven't done it before in a class. So if somebody wants to maybe raise their hand and I can call on you. Oh, okay, so I'm going to see how this works. John Brink has raised his hand, and I'm going to click on you. And John, can you talk now? John, can you talk now? Okay. Oh, I know. Here we go. Okay, how about now? Are you there, John? Click now. Okay, let's try someone else. Anyone else want to raise their hand? Be the guinea pig for our class. Okay, here we go. We have Lynn Sullivan who's raising her hand, and I am going to unmute you, Lynn. Lynn, can you say hello?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Great. So this is good. This works. Excellent. So did you have any questions or anything to say to Marie?
No, just thank you. This is exciting, and we're really looking forward to rolling through.
Okay. All right, I'm going to mute you. Goodbye. And I'm going to just try one more time. Thanks for bearing with me here, guys. I'm going to call on Rachel Meyer. Rachel, are you there? Rachel, can you hear us, or can you talk to us? Okay, a little bit of a mystery. I feel like I'm a radio talk show host here. Oh, can you hear me? Can you talk to us, Rachel? Okay. I'm going to try one more time. Bye, Rachel. Muted you, and I'm going to call on Greg Hill. Greg, you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh, I hear you perfectly.
Oh, good.
Excellent. Okay. Did you have anything you wanted to say to Marie?
No, not really.
Okay.
I am excited as the other speaker is too. So, yeah.
Great. Okay, perfect. Well, that works. So, so folks, we are going to just proceed using this software, and then for the next presentation, we'll just kind of I'll get a heads up from you on who's going to be speaking or presenting their group, their team challenges, findings, and I'll just go ahead and call on you the way we're trying it right now.
So for the next homework assignment, I would just like each team to present their schedule of how they're going to meet and how they're going to get together. And I'll ask each team leader that I assigned to prepare one PowerPoint showing your team schedule. It will give us practice in presenting the homework assignment and uploading those PowerPoints. You need to send them to me a week ahead of time so that I have them, and it'll give us experience in presenting our homework. And it would also help other teams if you've come up with some way of meeting and presenting. We can share those so that we could populate. Other people would share those information. We could reshuffle that information within our workshop.
Excellent.
And then I'll have for volunteers to maybe share some of their observations with us.
Great. And I just have one other question, Marie, from one of our attendees asking if you have a list of those great biomimicry examples that you gave. Do you have?
Do I have a list of them?
Yeah, so this person's interested in
many out there. I don't really have a list of biomimicry examples. If that's something that's of interest to the group, let me know. I can provide one or two each webinar that have been developed using biomimicry.
Okay, that would be great.
Any other questions or comments? If not, we'll start a little early since it's almost lunchtime.
That sounds good.
Okay, well, thank you, Mila, and thank you to all the participants. And I'm looking forward to hearing from your results a month from Thursday for the next presentation on April 19th.
Excellent. And if you've got any biomimicry questions, you'd better ask Marie. But if you have any technical issues or anything else, you can feel free to email me or give me a call. Thank you very much, Marie.
Thank you, Mila. Goodbye.
Goodbye.